Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Furlong, and today we're talking population genetics. Remember that evolution only works on populations, not on individuals. And we know that evolution is happening if we start to see changes in the gene pool, in the allele frequency, actually. And when you hear the words allele frequency or gene pools, we think of all the genes that make up that population. And so theoretically, any individual can receive any of those genes in that gene pool or in that allele frequency. Now, we know that evolution is oftentimes driven by random occurrences. Now, mutation is a random process that does contribute to evolution. Remember, a mutation is a change in the DNA sequence, and this may cause a change in the phenotype and provide a greater chance of survival. So in the case of the stickleback fish, the marine stickleback fish had a pelvis, but due to a mutation, the freshwater stickleback fish lost that pelvis. Now, it just so happened, though, that in the freshwater ponds, that was a beneficial trait. It was better to not have a pelvis than if you were in the ocean. In the ocean, it was better to have a pelvis. And because missing the pelvis was a favorable trait in the freshwater, they were able to have a better chance of surviving and then producing offspring with that same favorable trait. Genetic drift is another non-selective or random process that can occur in small populations. Now, we're going to take a look at two types. The first is called a bottleneck effect. The other is the founder effect. So let's start off with the bottleneck effect. So here we have a population of mice, and you see that there's a wide variation in the color of the fur. In a bottleneck effect, there is some sort of catastrophe. And let's say there's a forest fire, and a lot of them don't make it through the forest fire. And now look what happens. The allele frequency has just changed. There's not nearly the variety of mice. Which ones survived, which ones didn't, was not based on any selective pressure. It was just pure chance. So the bottleneck effect is a catastrophic event that kills most of the population. And who lives and who dies? Totally by chance. But now there's a whole new allele frequency. Some alleles are totally gone. So the survivors are the ones that are going to now repopulate that area. In the founder effect, we have a large variety of mice fur color on this larger island, but by chance, a couple of these mice get caught up on a tree that gets swept out to a smaller island, and they end up on their own island. As these now become the colonizing members of this island, they are going to repopulate, if successful, and they'll have a totally different allele frequency than the ones on the larger island. So in the founder effect, a few individuals colonize a new area, which can lead to a different allele frequency in that area. Another random change is gene flow. This is the migration of individuals between populations. So let's say that we have two separate populations, but these mice, they don't know where one area of their territory begins and ends, and some mice decide to go into a new population. Well, that just changed the allele frequencies, didn't it? And maybe some other mice decide, well, we're going to move over here. That changed their allele frequency. It's totally random as to who goes from what place to another, but when they do, it changes the gene pool. Now, the reduction of genetic variation within a given species can increase the differences between populations of the same species. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's go back to our original mouse population. Maybe that some of these mice, they like to mate with other members of the same color, and so they develop their own little groups. Well, this can lead to new species. You see, we just reduced the genetic variation for that gene pool because they're only mating with members that have the same color, and that can increase the differences between these populations, which ultimately, if they stop mating with one another, can become a new species. Remember, changes in allele frequencies can occur due to random events: genetic drift, bottleneck effect, founder effect, gene flow, and mutation. I'll see you in class.